And now I'm very excited to welcome back one of our favorites, longest and most knowledgeable guests when it comes to handicap and college basketball, Mr. Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com. You can follow Kyle on X at Kyle Hunter Picks. Kyle, well, the madness is ending, my friend. How you doing?
Yeah, bittersweet time, Kiev. First, thanks for having me back again. It's always great to chat with you. But this is, the great games, Final Four. We've got some really good teams here. But knowing that there's just 3 games left in the college basketball season, definitely a big bummer for, hoops fans like us. But let's make the most of this time.
Yes, let's make the most of it, my friend. I guess we can look at the other tournaments. So I guess we have a few things to bet. I did find some success this week in the other tournaments. But maybe we'll touch on that. It is bittersweet. There's, of course, baseball, but we don't talk about baseball on a day-to-day basis. Baseball is almost like the NBA, where a pitcher can be changed really quick in the last moments, and it's very weather impactful, and the games are every day, so it's hard to get a show on. And I do love baseball like you do, and we'll be betting plenty for our followers and clients and things like that. So, but we're going to bounce into football and get into the NFL draft, so I'm excited to do that. Just real quick, touch on the NFL, Kyle. There has been some rule changes, which is interesting. Both teams to have a possession in overtime, and expanded replay is going to come into effect a little bit. Come from New York. So I'm curious about that, and the touchback to the 35-yard line. Real quick, what do you think about those changes?
First, I like both teams to possess the ball because I don't like a coin toss deciding who wins a game. So I definitely like both teams getting to possess the ball. The expanded replay, I'm not sure what to think, Kiev, because on the surface, it definitely sounds great. We do know in college basketball how all the replays and reviews have taken a lot more time. We're going to the monitor at the end of the game, and it adds 15 minutes. I hope that at least with the expanded replay, they'll move it quickly, kind of be on a time where, we make this decision within X amount of seconds or minutes, or else we move on, that type of thing. But in general, I certainly like, things like face masks or horse collars or things like that being able to be looked at, since some of them have been some pretty poor calls over the years. The touchback to the 35-yard line is the one that kind of interests me the most, Kiev, because obviously that would lead to more scoring. I think about totals first. But I do have to say, the touchback, I thought they wanted more touchbacks, less kickoff returns, right? Now, that was what we were told at least a few years ago. The dangerous plays was the kickoff. The farther you keep moving it up, there's going to be more teams that don't just blast it through the end zone. So it kind of seems like going against what they said not that long ago, because not too many teams are going to really want to give the opponent the ball at the 35, right?
No, they're only going to blast it through the end zone unless they're up by 9 points or more now. I think everyone, because I think the average yard line was 28 and a half yard line that they got to anyway. Now maybe their whole idea is like, well, we're not starting them from their own 35-yard line. Well, they can get up to full speed in 40 yards, 20 yards. It's not that much of a difference. 2 guys running into each other. Yeah. So they did contradict each other themselves, but at the same time, it is going to put more points up, because now you're going to see more breaks. Most of the time they were just all touchbacks, and we didn't see too many, taking it to the house, right? And I think that is going to come more into effect. And starting at the 35-yard line, what leads safe if you're up by 6-7 points, especially 3 points, if you're just giving them a touchback, not many. You're going to want to pop that thing up in the air as high as it can be and have it drop at the 2-yard line, and that's what we're going to see, which I do like. I'm not going to lie, I like that. Right. I think the expanded replay is replay assist, they call it, is smart. I think they can do more with it, though, Kyle. The difference with college is you have the same refs doing the game having to walk to the monitor, right, look at it a million times and justify it, and then many, as we've seen before in the NFL, they just stick with the bias, even though it's wrong. They don't care because they're the refs, I think that the fact that it goes to New York is amazing. I can overturn these penalties a lot quicker Now, the replay assists in some points did take a little time, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It's as quick as me and you watching it and seeing the obvious. So I think that they just need to get better at it. I think it's great for the integrity of the game, but they should go farther and fix some of the other things like the spotting of the ball and the pass interference. I mean, how do you allow that in the playoffs to happen where they spot the ball purposely or not purposely? That's up to you to decide. In a home atmosphere, helping that team, that's awful. So I think I do like the replay expansion. I hate stoppages though, Kyle. So I think they can do that better. Both teams to possess it in overtime. That's going to really burn Survivor, man, because there's going to be 2 touchdowns, and then is the final team going to go for 2 and risk a loss? No, maybe not. I think they might just tie it and take the tie. It just depends upon, I guess, how good the offense is. I think a lot of coaches will be like, we're either going to win or lose this game right here. In which, Dan Campbell's going to do already, sure. But from a Survivor perspective, man, there's going to be more ties, which means more losses in Survivor. So that's just made Survivor harder, which I find very interesting. And I do think of that. So I think of the totals being up a little bit higher too. And I think of Survivor, which is very interesting. You know what I would do, Kyle? In overtime, I would say just get rid of extra points. Both teams must go for 2. I think that would fix it. And that would maybe make it so there's just as many ties as before. So they should think of that. So, in the NFL is just obviously coming. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I do agree with you on a lot of that. I think it would have been nice if pass interference was included, just because we know how big those pass interference penalties can be. I know that would take a lot of time, but some of the biggest calls in the NFL are the 50-yard pass interference penalties. I mean, those are just massive calls. In college, you get 15 yards. In NFL, it's a spot. If you make a bad pass interference call, that completely changes a game. I know that would be tough to review all those, but I'll be curious to see if that changes over time too.
Yes, absolutely. If you make a bad pass interference call, that needs to change. I just don't think they're there yet. Letting the refs fix it themselves. They say, "Oh, well, that didn't work." Well, then bring it to New York, duh. I mean, when they were talking about it yesterday, I was like, what are you doing? I was watching a little Pat McAfee show yesterday, and that's what got me fired up. It's like, why aren't you talking about that? But either way, it's very fixable. They just got to remove their heads from their behinds. Thanks for coming in, Bobby. I appreciate it. And always appreciate you coming in, man. And all you other listeners and viewers out there, thanks for chiming in live, because this show comes out the next morning, but it's always cool for you guys to come in and talk to us too, man. Love it. Coaching change is already happening, Kyle. In college basketball, it's not even over, my man. You know how we feel about that. What's the strangest one right now? And you can define it in a couple different ways, I guess, but just to you.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 that I really like the hires for, and then the one that surprised me the most. Darian DeVries is going to do a good job at Indiana. I think he's a very good coach. McCollum to Iowa, a great coach as well. At Kiev, I think the Big Ten's about to get a lot better at basketball. I think this is going to be a really good conference. Didn't it surprise you that Buzz Williams left Texas A&M? I thought that one was pretty interesting.
Yes. And I feel like he plays little brother to the Longhorns. And yeah. I don't know why he should feel like that, but now with the Longhorns in the SEC, he probably lost a little bit of recruiting by doing that, I would think. And that's definitely something to consider, because that's the thing that's going to make you good in college basketball is the transfer portal and recruiting. And it's so quick. It's year to year, with that. So it did shock me. Don't get me wrong. I am absolutely shocked. And he's running over to Maryland, which is interesting too. But yeah, that's great one. What's funny is it wasn't strange with Kevin Willard out the door before he's played in the Sweet 16 against Florida.
That was weird.
Yeah. It's super weird, man. And it's horrible for the sport, isn't it?
Absolutely. It looks really bad when your team's about to play the biggest game of the season. You got young kids who have played the entire season for this, and then that's the talk going into the game. I hated that for the team in general, the players.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bobby likes Matt Brower too. Stephen F.
Ooh, under the radar. I like it.
Yeah, well, there you go. Kyle Keller's gone there. And That's interesting. So I didn't even think of that one, man. So thanks, Bobby. Appreciate you chiming in. He said, remember Mark Turgeon leaving A&M for Maryland as well. So wow, two teams left there,
Pipeline.
A&M for Maryland. But Bobby's just a human stat machine right now. No, that is totally true. But the whole Kevin Willard thing, going to Villanova is a head scratcher. Don't get me wrong. Jay Wright was amazing. And people look at Villanova as a basketball program. I remember when I was parking cars during college, I'd drive to Milwaukee to do it for valet parking cars for people. I remember the Villanova basketball team came to our hotel. And I was like, oh, these guys are tall. I was probably like 19, 20 years old. And I was like, Villanova, though? I was kind of scratching my head. They haven't been that good. And this is 99, you know. And they haven't really done much since 1985 where they won it, right? They won it once. But then you look at Maryland, who's won it before multiple times. And it's kind of weird to see Kevin Willard just bounce to Villanova like the grass is that much greener. I mean, I feel that the Big East, without the football backing, I mean, that NIL money's got to come from somewhere. Are they making enough in basketball? I think it's just more of a disadvantage. I almost feel like that was a horizontal move, or it could be worse for Kevin Willard, Kyle.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Jay Wright was amazing. Well, he's one of my favorite coaches there's been. You know, when I've been watching college basketball, we saw what the drop off was like from Jay Wright to Kyle Neptune. Now, I think Kevin Willard's going to do better than Neptune did. But is the upside at Villanova really higher than the upside at Maryland? I would think the answer is no right now. I mean, like you said, you know, at the very best, it's a lateral move. I mean, and that's, I don't think could be anything better than that. And I don't know why you make that move, and especially when he made the move. So, yeah, I don't think he made himself any. And if he doesn't do well here, Kiev, it's not going to look good on him in the future because people are going to remember that was not handled very well.
Right. And Kevin, he did that before too when he left for Maryland. And I forgot. I thought it was a Big East team he left from.
Seton.
Yeah. Okay. You know, that was weird. And is Kevin Willard that good of a coach? I mean, going from Jay Wright down to anybody, I guess, is tough. But geez, right. Kevin Willard. And don't get me wrong, I was not a Kyle Neptune guy. But dude, that's just so weird. And here's another really weird one. Kevin Keats, after going to the Final Four, and not just going to the Final Four, they weren't making the tournament unless they won the ACC last year. He did that, and he's gone the very next year, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. Will Wade is, you know, a good coach, and he's proven it at McNeese. But dude, I mean, give the guy another year, maybe. I don't know. I suppose the program was going in the wrong direction, but isn't that also kind of strange to see?
Oh, that one was harsh. That was pretty shocking too. That one might be the most shocking as far as somebody getting fired. I mean, how can you get fired after you make that kind of run? And it's 1 year later. We knew they're going to be worse this year. Now they did have a bad year, but it's 1 year. I mean, there wasn't much lenience on that one. I did think the Sean Miller move and then also Richard Pitino ending up at Xavier is an interesting one too. Some interesting moves already, Kiev. I mean, like you said, we got the Final Four still in front of us, and all these moves have already happened. Absolutely.
One more. Is there going to be a bigger change of pace than the Iowa Hawkeyes from Fran McCaffrey to Ben McCollum?
Right. Oh, man. I think the odds maker is going to be onto that one, Kiev.
They have to be, but the truth is, the first week of college basketball usually goes over anyway. So I think that's just going to be hit too hard to the under. That all of a sudden you're going to get some overs, and people are going to not know what to do. But that's just how college basketball goes. So I'll be kind of looking for that over, actually, believe it or not, the first week, and then kind of lay off and maybe start betting some unders later when you know, maybe double dip on that situation. But yeah, man, it's just been a crazy time in college sports because the transfer portal is screwing everything up. And you can't even blame these kids when you got Kevin Willard. You know, commitment my ass, dude. You freaking left them before the Sweet 16 game even started. And they created that atmosphere in college basketball. So that really annoys me too. Let's talk real quick about some of the other tournaments. You know, it's funny. To me, I feel like they're a little anticlimactic this year. And what I mean, do you get that feeling as well. Don't get me wrong. I bet on I hit Chattanooga yesterday. I hit UC Irvine yesterday. I was really happy with my bets, but it just doesn't feel like the same excitement as it did in the past, even for the smaller tournaments.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the way that the Crown came in there and then NIT versus Crown setup was kind of a strange one. It made for some of the mid majors getting all in one tournament, the bigger teams that weren't very good being in the other tournament. I don't know. I think the thing that I would, if you're listening to this or viewing this, the thing that I would pay the most attention to is over the last 15 or 20 years, early in the NIT, early in any of these smaller postseason tournaments, the over has done really well. But when you get later in it, the over doesn't do near as well because the teams actually care that they're there. They want to try to win it. So I think we're at that point now where you don't want to just blindly bet the overs thinking this is free money. So I personally am not betting a lot of these smaller tournaments, especially at this point. I did well in them at the beginning, but at this point, I'm going to kind of lay off of those because I don't see any strong edges to be had. But if the market keeps pushing all of them up as far as overs, I think there could be value on some unders here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Georgetown, Nebraska, I was kind of looking at tonight. I was like, this is getting, it was getting up there. Then now it's coming back down. So it's just, there's people onto it. I think they're sharp lines too. They're pretty sharp. I can see both situations, where it could go over 153, under 153. I think it's a perfect number. Boise State seems a little high at 154.5. I don't know. I was thinking about getting involved, but I'm not so sure either, but it was a great point. So you get the overs early, but if you missed out on them, don't bother because they're going to start going under according to the trends. How about some final or NCAA tournament and the Final Four discussion? I mean, we have a chalky tournament, Kyle. I think that when we first talked about it, we kind of agreed that it was going to be chalky. I mean, I myself even didn't think it was this chalky. It was funny. I was like, I picked all number one seeds in my bracket, but I'm not going to win because I got a couple number twos wrong. I mean, I try to get cute with the 2 seeds, my man. And it's funny, the people with the most chalk are literally going to win their bracket challenges. And unfortunately, my wife is going to be one of them as she's got Duke versus Auburn in ours. And if Auburn wins and Duke wins it all. I'm going to have a tough year coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the chalk, we kind of expected it, Kiev, when we first talked, that this was the setup for it. And I know personally, I put just a little bit of pizza money on all the number 1 seeds to get here. I really wish I'd bet more on that, but I felt kind of guilty even betting that. It's like, here's the chalk eater. So, I took a little bit of it, but I think this is kind of set up for Kiev. Remember when they first said, the transfer portal, this is going to make it even. It's going to make some of these other teams have more of a chance. That's showing to not be the case because what happens is these better players from the smaller teams, the mid-majors, just transfer to a bigger name team. And a lot of those guys are leading their teams now in the NCAA tournament. I think as far as the tournament thus far, I know a lot of people have said, man, this sucks, all chalk. It does make for fun games in the Final Four and the finals. I assume there will be some good games. I do wish there had been a little bit more drama in some of the games so far this year. There wasn't quite the madness, the dramatic finishes that we usually see. So I would have liked to see more of that. But, I think the people who thought that this portal era was going to even things up, and, it just shows that really the rich have gotten richer. They're going to be able to keep getting those best players. I mean, day by day, Kiev, we see best player from Summit League, best player from whatever league is transferring to a bigger school. I don't see why that's going to stop anytime soon. I don't see anything to change that. So I think that's just kind of the new normal. As far as trends, Kiev, I'll go with some trends here for the Final Four. There's not really a ton. I'll say that because, the sample size is not massive. I'm looking back to 2005 when you only have Final Four, 2 games, you can't get a massive sample size. The favorites are 21, 16, and 1 against the spread in the Final Four. Teams who shoot better than 75% from the free throw line are 8-3 against the spread. I think that one does track to something that would make sense. We've seen how many of these games matter at the end with whether you make free throws or not. I mean, you can ask Texas Tech if it matters if you make free throws or not. Look, Kiev, I was rooting for Texas Tech. I mean, I was sitting there. I'm like, I'm rooting for Texas Tech. I actually bet on all 4 of the number 1s to get to the Final Four, but I didn't really want it to happen. It was just kind of a weird thing where I do like some underdogs. I mean, not that Texas Tech is really that big of an underdog, but
Yeah.
I found myself kind of feeling bad for Texas Tech, but those missed 1-and-1s were what changed the game. I mean,
Yeah.
good job by Florida to foul on purpose in the 1-and-1, and then they missed both of them. I think those teams shooting really high from the line, continuing to do well against the spread makes sense. How about this, Kiev? Final four totals of 156.5 or higher, 4-0 to the under. There's not too many of them because you're not going to have 160 totals very often in the Final Four. We do happen to have one here this year, but they're 4-0 to the under with the average margin of about 4 points. And the over is 12-5 in the last 17 in the Final Four when the spread is 5 points or smaller. So that is, more of a foul fest possibility for overtime. Now, the thing that kind of makes that an interesting point is the one that has the 160 total also has a small spread. So you'll see some overlap and things like that. But I think both of those make some sense. Really high totals. It's hard to get to that when you get to this point. But the over has done well when the spread is tight because you see more of the foul fest and the chance for an extra session there.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's 159.5. I think it's coming down a little bit based on that trend and probably some people just know how to bet these. The first half under is 75.5, which I'd be a little bit more inclined to like is the first half under myself. I've been doing pretty well in the first half unders on some of these games. I had to pick them though. It's not like I had to blanket them like a couple years ago, which was great. But like you got to pick your poison here. Florida does like to run, but man, they turn the ball over so much over the past 3-4 games that they might calm that down a little bit too. Auburn starts out a little slow, so I definitely, I'm gonna get right into it then. First game is Auburn versus Florida, and Florida is about a 2.5 point favorite. Kyle, I'll let you go ahead first with this one. I have some thoughts, but I haven't made a bet yet.
I haven't made a bet in this one either. We can say it here. Both of us are always honest to everybody. These lines are not going to have these massive edges. I mean, these are obviously going to be sharp lines. So I wouldn't go crazy betting massive on any of these games. I don't really want to bet the under here between these two teams, but I certainly couldn't bet over. At this high of a number, at this stage, neutral, massive gym. Now, this one hasn't been one that's necessarily been under. There haven't been that many games here, but they've been pretty neutral. I think both teams get a lot of second chance opportunities, which kind of worries me if you take the under. Who's going to win the battle on the boards? Is Janai Broome healthy enough? I mean, that's the key question. We know Broome has been fantastic, great all year. Walter Clayton, this guy was just hooping at Iona a couple years ago. Now he's the star for Florida. When you think about it, Kiev, Broome was at Morehead State a few years ago, and now Walter Clayton was at Iona. Now they're both in the Final Four leading their teams. Kind of goes to what I was saying that, these mid-majors just end up at a bigger team, and then they're the ones leading the team. And it's like, wow, I can't believe that guy was back there before. It's part of what's fun to cover mid-majors and to pay attention to those, but it's also kind of a bummer in some ways because a lot of the best players are going to end up somewhere else just because they're so good. Florida's been really clutch. I'm going to ask you a question here, Kiev, and you can throw it back to me after this because I'll give some thoughts. But Florida's been so clutch in the tournament, and I've heard people say it different ways. So you could either say, they're down most of the game against UConn and Texas Tech. Does it give you confidence because they've played from behind, they've won those close games, or does it make you concerned because it's hard to win every single game from being behind? Which way do you look at that?
Concerning. It's concerning because I feel like the road that because they won their SEC championship, and we just know those are not always parallel, where they win that. It just feels like the team needs a break and needs a loss. It's just how we've always looked at the tournament. It's sometimes worse to win your conference tournament. Now, UConn didn't do that last 2 years or last year, I think it was. I'm not sure if they won it 23, but it's in general, you can see fatigue there. You can see just kind of sloppiness, like we win, we're just going to kind of be loose with the ball, less defense, less sense of urgency. they're coming in and they already beat Auburn. So yes, I think it is a detriment, Kyle.
Yeah, I agree. And I see Bobby in the chat says, as a coach, that's concerning because the well's going to run dry eventually. I think so too. I mean, you can't do that every single time. They've made some really tough shots in those games too. Walter Clayton with some of the step back threes. Look, he's definitely clutch, but you don't want to have to do that every single game. I would probably lean Auburn plus the points here if I had to bet something on a side. I haven't bet anything. I don't know that I will bet anything in this game. I like the other game more, but Florida has not been consistently really good here, and you're giving 2.5 points against an Auburn team that's done very well, has played throughout the course of the season well enough that, were it not for some issues late and Broome having an injury, I think they'd be more highly thought of. So I don't know. I don't think -2.5 is any great line to be taking Florida now. Anything could happen here, obviously, and I want to know how Broome's going to be in this one. But Auburn does have a decent amount of guys that can shoot it from the outside. They have some potential to do well, even if Broome isn't a superstar.
So, we talk about Florida's should have lost to Texas Tech. It's just complete crumble. And, you have Texas Tech that has all the blame. They couldn't grab a rebound, and the free throws mattered, and everything mattered. And, then Clayton won the game for him, really. And it's funny how he did transfer from Iona. Like you said, it's amazing to see that. Players just get better in college sometimes. We see it all the time on John Morant and, when he was at Murray State. Yeah, you just see some of these players get great. And Walter Clayton was one of them. And then, now he's like the third or fourth best player in college basketball. It's pretty amazing to see. I trust Walter Clayton more than any of these guys to make a final 3-pointer or a 3-point shot. But at the same time, I would also take the points if I was going to bet this game. These guys are close metrically. You got a medium-paced team with Auburn and a fast-paced team with Florida. Florida's got more of a rim and three rate. They succeed at the rim and three more often, and then Auburn is kind of balanced. But they do everything pretty well. But they've been inconsistent too, man. They could pull away from Michigan State that well. Thank goodness I middled that one because I bought back when that Broome injury happened. I was shocked to see him come back. I was like, dude, he's dislocated. I thought it was over, dude. I thought this season was, I think, comes back in. But I still think, Bay's left-handed. He still could be hurt, and we don't even know about it, man. It's just so dangerous to bet Auburn right now, isn't it? It's like something that they're not going to announce. That why would they let people know? And maybe he does play, and he's extremely compromised. If he gets bumped around by those big guys on Florida, which Florida's loaded, and Florida's very deep, with Condon and those guys, that's going to hurt him, and that's going to affect him. This game became such an inconsistent, high variance game for me. But I came into this tournament thinking Florida might be the best team because of the flag injury. Now I think that Duke is the best team in this tournament by a decent amount, just because of the inconsistencies we're seeing with Florida. I'm not going to play doctor here and know that Broome's fine for sure. I know there was another player on Auburn. I forgot his name that had a wrist little issue his last game too. But man, I think this could be a live betting game. And if it's not the under, which I very much I'll lean on the total side. I'll lean on the under, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get there, but the first half could happen. This is probably a point where if Auburn jumps ahead, you grab Florida. You want anything 3.5 or more for sure. And if Florida jumps them, you want to make sure you can grab Auburn at +5 or so or better. I think that you can have some fun with that, and maybe even eventually during the game you can have both plus money on both sides.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Full disclosure, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to bet a side on this before the game. I might live bet it. If I had to bet this game, I slightly lean Auburn, but like you said, there's too much unknown. I hate the unknown. We don't know about Broome. I would lean the under just because that's such a high number. It's hard to get to. Kiev, I should have said it too, and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but second half unders have done really well. If you look at second halves in both the Final Four and final games, I believe you're above 60% in the last 10 years. So I don't have that exact number. Maybe I'll tweet that one out later. But second half unders have done really well. I think those games probably tighten up a little bit as you get down to the end. This is it. You know, I mean, you either win it or you don't. So if you can avoid that foul fest, then those second half unders have done pretty well. I think this is a tough game to bet because of all the unknowns.
That's right. That's right. Second half unders. And, you know, that's sometimes the teams just be up 7 points. And then with 4 minutes left, they just try to run it completely down. You know, without even kind of thinking, they just start running the clock. You know, it's like, dude, you're only up 5 points, still running the clock. It's just almost like the way they think because they're up so often during the year, and you're seeing a lot of that. Yeah, Ken Palm's got it 161. It's definitely, you know, like I said, I think that's too high. Haslametrics has this game at literally 157, so he's got it a little bit closer to where I think it should be made here from a total side. So I'm not going to bet a side either, Kyle. And I have Auburn in my survivor, so I'm kind of hoping they win. But my one with Florida got beat because I really thought Tennessee was going to give Houston some problems. And holy cow, I got Rick Barnes right out of that one. Yeah, I mean, don't feel sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for anyone that backs Rick Barnes.
I'm not going to say anything there.
Including myself. Well, here's the thing. Everyone was picking Houston. I had to do something. But I'm still alive in one. But let's move on to the next game. I think you might have said you have a play in this one, which I do have a play. Houston versus Duke. Duke -5, total 136.5. This is at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, like the other game. I guess we can start. There should be home field advantage there for Houston, or you think it should be even?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to have some home court advantage. I mean, this is a setup where playing that close to home has to help you in some ways. Now, Duke is going to have plenty of fans. They have fans everywhere, obviously. I don't think it's massive. You know, does it make a point difference? Maybe. You know, it wouldn't be anything drastic. Kiev, you already said it. I'm going to say the same thing. Duke is the best team in the Final Four. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Does that mean they're definitely going to win it? It doesn't necessarily. The best team doesn't always win the tournament, you know, newsflash. But I think Houston has to slow this game down, turn this into a slog. If this isn't a slog, low-scoring game, I think Houston's really in trouble. So, you know, if you like Houston, I feel like you have to like the under. I mean, I don't think there's any kind of way that Houston can win if this is higher scoring. You know, I think here the question for me is, we just saw Alabama last game. We saw Mark Sears, look how bothered he was by the length that was on him from Duke. Duke has nobody short. I mean, everybody that's playing is 6'6" or taller. I think the shortest guy on their team is 6'5", which is just insane. The tallest team in the country also happens to be the most talented team in the country. It's kind of unfair in some ways. You know, I think it would have been kind of fun to see Duke play UConn from last year. I think that would have been a good matchup based on the way UConn kind of wiped through everybody. I think Duke might even be favored in that game. That doesn't mean that Duke's going to win this tournament by any means, but Duke has played really well. Cooper Flagg versus Tugler is a really good matchup because Tugler is one of the best defenders in the country. Duke does have other guys who can beat you, though. Con Knipple has been fantastic. I think he's underrated by most people. They have a lot of good guys from the outside. I don't think there's any great line value here in taking Duke, but I think Duke is the much more complete team. I could not bet Houston. And Kiev, you know I love Houston. I love the way they play. Sampson gets the most out of that team. They play so hard. They're as scrappy as anybody. Their defense is fantastic, but what is the difference between these two teams? I think Houston goes through those long scoring droughts. You know, are they going to be able to avoid that 4 or 5 minute span? It almost got them against Gonzaga. You know, there's games where Houston has struggled offensively for a long period of time. I think Duke's going to score too much that Houston can't have one of those long droughts here. I definitely like Duke if I'm betting a side here in this one. And I also like Houston team total under. I know that this kind of goes against what some people would think. And, you know, I just said, if you like Houston, you like the under. I'm not betting the under overall, but I don't think Houston's going to score a lot on Duke. I think of the sides that I feel the most confident about, I don't think Houston's going to score a lot of points on the Duke defense. The Duke offense has been so good that we kind of forget that their defense is really good too. A lot of height, shot blockers. This is a Duke team that, they have the length on the perimeter, and then they also have Malak on the inside just swatting everything. I mean, you go in there and you got 7'2" with arms that go on for days. Really, really tough. I think Houston is going to have a hard time scoring. So I'm going to take the Houston team total under here in this one, Kiev. I think Houston, if they win, it'll be because they won a really ugly, low-scoring game. I don't think they will score a lot of points here. So that's what I'm going to take here in this one. I would bet Duke on the side if I was betting a side here as well. Just don't know that Houston can consistently be good enough. I think Houston's a really fun team, and they might be even one of the toughest matchups for Duke. It's just that I really feel highly about what Duke is at this point.
100%. Interesting look. It's 65.5 on BetOnline. Duke 70.5 for their team total. Try to find a 66 if you can. I mean, that's the total's 136.5, so this comes up to 136. So, I totally agree. I think Duke's defense is the most underrated part of this whole tournament, really, and not just tournament, just pretty much everything. I mean, Arizona played their best game that I've ever seen and lost still, and Duke is just, they can do everything they want. They can play slow. They can play fast. They're going to get you either way. And the depth, like you said, and I'm glad you called out Knievel because nobody's talking about Knievel. He's 6'7" freshman himself, and he's just kind of a very poised kid. He's just, understands things. He just seems very mature for his age. Bobby thinks that there's going to be more Houston fans there. Maybe so. There's going to be Duke haters there. They're just going there just to hate Duke, which I don't disagree with you there, man. But I don't know if that's going to be enough because, I mean, when I said Tennessee played Houston, Tennessee was so bad that first half, 1 for 15 from 3, that I said SIU Edwardsville would have beaten that half. I still believe that. I mean, SIU Edwardsville would have beat Houston or Tennessee that half. Houston had it super easy that half. And don't get me wrong, when Houston was in the crunch time against Purdue, which I kind of thought to myself, man, Purdue could be in this game. I'm really wishing that I bought back on Purdue because I made an early bet on Houston. But Purdue should have had them in that game. There were some terrible out-of-bounds calls the last 8 minutes of that game. I mean, so bad that there needs to be somebody talking about this in the NCAA, but they don't. They shut their mouths. That was just disgustingly egregious. It wasn't just one. And, Purdue could have won that game. And Purdue is not that great of a team. They got great guards, but they are very, very weak inside. And guess what? Houston could not do much inside against Purdue. What's it going to do when Houston's the 260th tallest team against the tallest team in Duke? It could absolutely spin out of control very quickly. It's funny. I'm talking about this game. I didn't even get to my handicaps that I wrote down. Ken Tom Hazelmetrics and Bart Torvik have both these guys. They're both 1 and 2 teams. I disagree. I think Houston's the 5th best team. I think Alabama's a little ahead of them. Houston is supposed to have a little bit of a shooting the 3 advantage over Duke, but I just think that has to have their metrics in shooting the 3 had more to do with the Big 12, in my opinion. I saw them in the non-conference, and they were not that exciting to me. They lost to Auburn by 5. They lost to Alabama by 5. I think Duke cleans house. I bet 4.5. I like it at 5, Kyle, and I also like your team total look because I think like I said, the most underrated part about this Duke team is their bench and their defense. I like Duke -5.
Yep, I think we're aligned on this one, and I think Bobby makes a good point here too that Houston is in real trouble if they start calling fouls quickly because they're very aggressive on defense, very physical. If they get in foul trouble, this could get really ugly. So Duke is clearly the better team in my estimation, and even though I love Houston and the way they play, I think they're outmatched here.
All right, let's just call it Duke versus Florida -4.5 at the final game. Any? Have you thought forward yet on these lines? Or, I mean, I would still take Duke.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Duke or I'm passing on the side. I'm not betting
Yeah,
against Duke.
yeah.
I trust them too much. Everybody knows their offense is amazing, but like we were saying, Kiev, their defense is better than people realize. Um, they're first in effective field goal percentage defense. They take care of the ball on offense. Where's the chink in the armor? I mean, they've been very good in every way. And Kiev, you know this. I think the people who have listened before, neither one of us would be talked of as a Duke fan. I'm certainly not a fan of Duke. It's just handicapping it. I think Duke's clearly the best team. So I'm either betting Duke or I'm passing. Duke, Florida, 4.5.
Well, the
Probably
total
would take
too.
Duke.
I would take
Yeah,
Duke too. The total is you can't bet overs in final games. You know, that's the problem. I would stay away probably, but I mean, you're going to see a total of 166. You know, it might be higher. It's probably going to be 166, is what I think.
yeah.
I can't
I think
tell
I'd
you.
have to. I think I'd have to bet under Kiev. Like I'd hold my nose and bet the under if that's what it was.
I would too. I would too. I mean, at some point, with these teams are going to have to just get nervous. I mean,
Yeah.
Duke has just been so poised, but man, if Florida hasn't. Now this is subject to teams. I would take Florida. I would take Duke minus the 4.5 against Auburn, or it's going to be 5.5 against Auburn. I would take probably 5.5 if I had to bet it against Auburn, and I would take 4.5 against Duke. But that's just for now. I'm going to talk about it quickly on Sunday night, Monday, after the plays, after things come in, and see if I change my mind and see if there is a play on any of these totals. But no, man, I agree with you. Duke just looks like the truth this year, and they remind me of UConn of last year a lot. And too bad we can't have UConn of last year play Duke of this year. That'd be fun.
That would be a great one.
So baseball, real quick, Kyle. So it looks like we both like Duke minus 4.5, minus 5, 2.5 stars for me, and Kyle likes the under team total under 66. We'll call it. Baseball, just not like plays or anything, but like, what do you think about this time of year for betting baseball? Is there anything the bettors should know here when it comes to early baseball?
Yeah, just kind of cliff notes really quick here. Early MLB, you don't want to overreact to what you see at the beginning. This is a really long season. This is the ultimate grind. I think that MLB too is more affected by weather this time of the year than it is most of the times of the year. I mean, you think of how many times there's cold fronts blowing through and there's 20 miles per hour wind blowing one way or the other. I love to bet totals, that. I think totals are affected by the weather more here at this time of the year than most. And then again, once it gets really hot in the summer and the ball's really carrying well. But I like betting totals this time of the year. Underdogs have done pretty well early in the season because nobody's really given up. I mean, everybody thinks they have a chance in the first week of the season, Kiev. Like even if they're not right, I mean, we know some of these teams are going to be bad. You have to have belief at this point in the season. So nobody's packed it up. Underdogs have done pretty well if you go back. The other thing I'll say is just, I like to look at the umpires. The home plate umpire has a lot of control on a game. I think it's really underrated. Some of these guys have completely different strike zones than others. So if you want to look for an added factor that most people don't really look at very much, look at the umpires. Take a Doug Eddings, for example, that just has a massive strike zone versus some of the other guys who walk a lot of guys. It makes a big difference when it comes to betting totals. So that's the quick way of saying it. But I think some people are going to overreact and see one team's 1-4 or something like, wow, man, this team sucks. There's no way the Braves can do anything. They've started really bad. It's a long season. You never know. If somebody wants to sell all the stock in a team that looked like they were going to be really good just because of 4 or 5 games, then I'd look to try to buy it low.
Yeah, that's great points there. Underdogs are not really such underdogs at many when it's this early in the season. They're trying, like you said, and yeah, the coldness will definitely affect the travel of this ball and and also the weather in itself, the wind and everything you get in the spring. But man, I'll tell you, when June, July happens, sometimes those balls are flying out the park. That's when you kind of want to look it over. So 100% agree with you there. Yeah, baseball is a grind. Sometimes you just think there's no way this team is going to lose to this team. And then you're like, how the heck? You scratch your head. I mean, there's some big dogs out there. Like, I was looking today at a few of them. And I think the Dodgers were playing the Houston or not Houston, Atlanta Braves.
Right.
How are the Braves plus 200 against anybody at some point? It's just like, Jesus, you want to get there, and then the Braves are 0-6. Was I thinking the Braves are going to be 0-6 this year? I certainly was not. So it's just, it's tough to think about.
It is. I think the Braves are far better than they've looked so far. Now, what will that mean later in the season? I want to see if the market gets too low on them. The Dodgers are on another level than everybody else. It's hard to bet against the Dodgers. Now I see plus 215, plus 220 on the Braves. It looks ridiculous. I don't want to bet against Blake Snell. I didn't bet on that game, but I would certainly lean Atlanta. I think, some of those teams that are going to be really bad teams later in the season could actually make you money early in the season because they're still fighting. This is really a grind. Definitely check that weather. Also, we'll see if how many people get a hold of that torpedo bat.
Yeah, that's just the big story. Torpedo bat. I hope I don't have to buy my son a new Little League
No kidding.
Club baseball bat already. That would all of a sudden, like, half the kids on his team have torpedoes like tomorrow. Right. That would suck. In the Rockies plus 275, and the Rockies are one of the worst teams against Zach Wheeler and the Phillies. It's like Zach Wheeler and the Phillies minus 315. This is when there's no way I would bet the Phillies, but can I get to the Rockies? I feel the same way, Kyle.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'll say is, from my experience, Kiev, I've bet less of the run lines year by year. It's been my weakness in MLB. Maybe somebody's really good at run lines, but I've had a lot of success betting money lines. I've had a lot of success betting totals. It just never ends when I bet a -1.5 that team wins by 1. It's pretty consistent. I think those times that you think -1.5 is an easy bet or an obvious bet, I think those are pretty dangerous. So if I were a listener or viewer out there, I wouldn't just go wild taking a bunch of those -1.5 run lines.
Yeah, like the Dodgers are -128 run or -235, but if you take the run line, but here's the thing: they have a half less inning.
Right.
They don't bet they don't bat the bottom of the ninth. So that essentially means if they're winning by 1, the Braves had more opportunities by 3 outs more. And so that's why they're priced this way for any new baseball bettors. So I think that's very interesting. I think the Braves run line looks a little interesting at plus 108. I'll look at that. On the plus side, it's never never is hard, I guess. But Snell has been awesome. The Dodgers are, like you said, are on a different level. And you know what else is on a different level? Kyle Hunter picks, my man. He has been crushing it. Your baseball last year was immaculate, my friend. Where can our listeners get your great information in place?
Yeah, 74 and 35 last year in MLB. I'm not going to do that again, so I'm not going to tell you I will. But baseball's been my best professional sport over the years. So hopefully another good baseball season. It's a long grind. I did discount my MLB season pass by $40 for the next 24 hours. So you can go check that out over at huntersportspicks.com. That'll be up till Thursday night. So you can get on that over at huntersportspicks.com. If you don't want to buy the plays, you certainly don't have to. I'm not a salesman. I love to talk sports. I've made money long term. MLB is a good sport for me. Looking forward to, even though I don't love the regular season NBA, I do like the NBA playoffs. Like as things kind of gear up and it's more important. So I'll have plenty of NBA plays as well. But free picks newsletter over at the site as well. You can follow me at Kyle Hunter Picks on X. Kiev, thanks for having me on. It's always fun.
Always, my man. Make sure you guys check out Kyle Hunter. He's going to have so much more to come throughout the rest of the spring. Have a great day, Kyle.